The key felt wrong in her hand, not because it was a key, but because of what it promised. It was heavy or jack and cold, a small piece of a world Kira Vance had only ever seen in magazines, the world of Jackson Price. He had called it her key, a key to a sanctuary, a key to their future. But as she stood before the weathered oak door of the secluded beach house in Carmel by the sea, with the salty wind whipping her hair and the roar of the Pacific in her ears, a sliver of doubt pierced her excitement. This wasn't their house. It was her house, his wife's. And as Kira inserted the key and turned the lock, she had no idea that the real owner was just a few feet away, her world about to collide with the truth. The drive up the coast had been a symphony of self-congratulation. Kira Vance gripped the leather-wrapped steering wheel of her leased BMW, the hum of the engine, a validation of every choice she'd ever made. The sun, a perfect California gold, glinted off the waves crashing against the Bixby Bridge as she sped past. Jackson Price had not just given her a key. He had anointed her. "It's our getaway, Angel," he'd murmured into her ear. 2 nights ago, his penthouse apartment, a glittering panorama of San Francisco beneath them. My wife. Helena. She never goes there anymore. Not since the pregnancy became complicated. It's just sitting empty. It should be filled with life. With us. He'd pressed the key into her palm. It wasn't a cheap copy from a hardware store. It was an antique skeleton key, its head fashioned into an intricate H. For Helena, Kira knew. A bitter taste had momentarily soured the champagne on her tongue, but she'd swallowed it down. Jackson was an expert at reframing reality. The H wasn't for Helena, he'd assured her, stroking her hair. It stood for haven. Their haven. Kira believed him because she had to. At 28, she was a senior analyst at a rival tech firm, perpetually hitting a glass ceiling that felt more like reinforced concrete. Jackson Price, the charismatic cutthroat CEO of Apex Innovations, was more than a lover. He was a lifeline. He saw her ambition, her fire, and he matched it. He promised her a seat at the table, a world away from the spreadsheets and condescending middle managers who stole her ideas. This weekend was the first real, tangible piece of that promise. She pulled into the long gravel driveway, concealed from the PCH by a thick grove of Monterey pines. The house was not the sterile glass box she'd expected. It was a sprawling, cedar-shingled craftsman, weathered by a century of salt and wind. It felt old, permanent, and deeply personal. A pang of something uncomfortable jealousy, guilt, pricked at her. This place had history, a history she wasn't part of. She shook it off. This was her weekend. Jackson was supposedly on a red-eye to Singapore for an emergency board meeting, a perfect alibi. He would join her in a few days, he'd said. For now, the house was hers to claim. She walked up the stone steps, the key feeling heavier now. The air was thick with the scent of pine needles and brine. No cars in the driveway, no lights in the windows, just the cry of a distant gull and the rhythmic sigh of the ocean. He was right. The place was empty. Inside the house, Helena Price rested a hand on the swell of her belly, where her son 7 months along gave a sudden sharp kick. She winced not from pain, but from the jolt of adrenaline that accompanied it. She'd been feeling on edge all day. Dr. Audrey Chen, her OB-GYN and closest friend, had ordered her to take it easy. Complete bed rest is just around the corner. Helena Audrey had warned last week. Your blood pressure is dancing on a knife's edge. No stress. Go to the one place you feel calm. Go to the beach house. So she had. She hadn't told Jackson. The lie had slid from her lips with a surprising ease. I'm staying with Audrey for a few days, darling. She wants to monitor me more closely. He'd barely looked up from his tablet. Good. Smart. I'll be in Singapore anyway. Take care of yourself. Take care of our boy. The words were right, but the tone was hollow. For months, Jackson had been a ghost in their marriage. A handsome, impeccably dressed ghost who smelled faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers and whose smiles no longer reached his cool, calculating eyes. The pregnancy, which should have been their shared joy, had become her solitary journey. It was a high-risk pregnancy, a detail that seemed to annoy him more than concern him, as if it were a poorly planned project deliverable that was falling behind schedule. This house was her only refuge. It had been her grandmother's willed directly to her. It was the only significant asset Jackson hadn't managed to fold into their labyrinth of joint trusts and corporate holdings. Its walls held the memory of every summer of her childhood, the scent of her grandmother's baking, the sound of laughter that was genuine and free. It was a sanctuary built on love, not on stock options and public offerings. She'd spent the day in quiet solitude, reading in the deep armchair that overlooked the ocean, feeling the baby move within her and trying to untangle the knot of anxiety in her chest. She knew something was wrong in her marriage. She just didn't know what. Or perhaps she hadn't wanted to. Admitting it would mean dismantling the entire beautiful, fragile life she had built. Then she heard it. The crunch of gravel in the driveway. A car door shutting. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It couldn't be Jackson. He was on a plane halfway over the Pacific. A delivery. A mistaken address. She rose slowly, her body feeling heavy and unbalanced, and padded softly toward the foyer. The house was silent, her bare feet making no sound on the wide plank floors. Through the beveled glass window beside the front door, she saw a woman. Young, stylish, with a mane of dark hair and a look of fierce determination on her face. She was holding something in her hand. A key. Her key. The Or-Jack silver key with the H that her grandmother had placed in her palm on her 18th birthday. Helena's blood ran cold. She kept a spare, hidden under a loose stone by the back porch. The main keys were with her and Jackson. Where had this woman gotten a key? She watched frozen as the woman confidently mounted the steps. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty of a person at the wrong address. This woman believed she belonged here. Helena's mind raced, connecting dots she had willfully ignored for months. The late nights, the sudden urgent business trips, the scent of Chanel No. 5 when she wore only Jo Malone, the emotional void that had opened up between them. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a woman with a key to her front door. Kira slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. A triumphant smile touched her lips. She turned it. The heavy lock gave a satisfying, resonant clunk. She pushed the door open, stepping out of the bright sunshine and into the cool, dim foyer. And then she saw her. Standing at the base of the grand staircase, bathed in the soft light from the clerestory windows above, was a woman. She was tall, elegant, even in a simple white linen dress, and very, very pregnant. Her hand was resting protectively on her stomach, her expression a mask of glacial calm. But her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held a fire that stopped Kira dead in her tracks. The two women stared at each other for a long, silent moment. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall and the distant roar of the ocean, which suddenly sounded less like a sigh and more like a threat. Kira's triumphant smile dissolved. The key in her hand was no longer a symbol of promise. It was a piece of evidence, a weapon that had just spectacularly backfired. Helena spoke first, her voice quiet, but carrying the chilling weight of absolute certainty. "You must be Kira." The name spoken so calmly in the sun-dappled quiet of the foyer hit Kira like a physical blow. Her mind, usually a sharp instrument of analysis and strategy, went completely blank. How could this woman, this pregnant, ethereal stranger, know her name? I think you have the wrong person." Kira stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. It was a pathetic defense, and she knew it. She clutched the handle of her overnight bag, her knuckles white. Her fight-or-flight instinct screamed at her to turn and run, to flee back to the safety of her car, and pretend this moment never happened. Helena took a slow step forward, her movements deliberate and serene, a queen surveying an unwelcome intruder in her court. "I don't think so." Kira Vance, senior analyst at Sterling Cooper Tech. "You favor the lunch special at the Gilded Spoon on Tuesdays. You have a penchant for overpriced gym memberships and underperforming stocks, and you've been sleeping with my husband for the last 6 months. Each detail was a precision strike." Kira felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't a guess. It was intelligence. It was surveillance. The feeling of being the clever one, the one with the inside track, evaporated into pure cold dread. She had been played. They both had. How? The word was all she could manage. "My husband is a creature of habit and boundless ego, Kira." "He's also careless," Helena said, her gaze unwavering. "And I am not a fool. Did you really think you could just walk into my life, into my home, and I wouldn't notice?" She gestured around the foyer at the family photos on the wall, the worn rug, the faint scent of lemon polish and old wood. "This isn't a hotel. This isn't some corporate suite Jack can loan out. This is my grandmother's house. This is my house." The emphasis on "my" was a final, devastating blow. The narrative Jackson had so carefully constructed of an abandoned house, a wife who was practically an ex, a space waiting for them, crumbled into dust. Kira was standing in the sacred heart of another woman's life, a life that was clearly not over, a life that was in fact about to begin a new chapter, one that was visibly growing in Helena's belly. The sight of that pregnant stomach, once a distant abstract concept, was now an unavoidable reality. A child, Jack's child. He'd told her they were having problems, that the pregnancy had been an accident, that the marriage was a shell. He'd never mentioned the sheer radiant vitality of his wife. "He told me." Kira began, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "He told me it was over between you. He said you didn't come here anymore." A dry, mirthless laugh escaped Helena's lips. "He tells you a great many things, I'm sure. He's a wonderful storyteller. It's the foundation of his business, after all. Selling people a story they desperately want to believe." She paused, her eyes scanning Kira from head to toe, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. It wasn't pity. It was something closer to assessment. And what story did he sell you, that he'd leave his pregnant wife, that the H on this key stood for haven? Kira flinched as if struck. The precision of the guess was uncanny. She felt utterly exposed, her deepest, most secret hopes laid bare on the floor of her rival's home. Before she could respond, a sharp pain shot through Helena's abdomen. She gasped, her hand flying to her stomach, her calm facade finally cracking. Her face went pale. "Are you okay?" Kira asked the question reflexive, a shred of human decency piercing her own shock. Helena leaned against the newel post, her breathing shallow. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice was strained. "Just the baby. He's letting me know he doesn't appreciate the drama." She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. When she opened them again, the fire was back. "You need to leave." "Yes. Of course." Kira fumbled with her bag, turning to go. All she wanted was to be anywhere else. But as she reached for the door, it swung open. Standing on the threshold, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun, was Jackson Price. He was dressed in a casual but expensive polo shirt and linen trousers, a stark contrast to the bespoke suit he was supposed to be wearing on a flight to Singapore. He held his phone in one hand and a set of car keys in the other. His charming smile was already in place, ready to greet his mistress for their secret weekend. It froze on his face as his eyes adjusted to the dim light of the foyer. He took in the scene in a single horrifying glance. Kira. Her face a mask of shocked fury, and Helena pale and leaning against the staircase, her hand cradling their unborn child. The silence that followed was absolute, a perfect vacuum where all lies went to die. Jackson, a man who could command a boardroom of sharks and charm billions from venture capitalists, looked utterly, completely cornered. His gaze darted between the two women, his mind visibly scrambling, searching for an angle, a narrative, a way to spin this disaster into something manageable. "Helena," he began, his voice taking on a tone of deep manufactured concern. "What are you doing here? I thought you were with Audrey. Is the baby all right?" He took a step toward her, his hand outstretched. Helena flinched back as if from a snake. "Don't touch me." His eyes hardened for a fraction of a second before the mask of concern slipped back into place. He turned to Kira, his expression shifting to one of bewildered innocence. "Kira, what on earth is going on? Why are you here?" The sheer audacity of the question was breathtaking. Kira stared at him, dumbfounded. He was going to pretend. He was going to act as if she were some crazed stalker who had shown up unannounced. The key, which she still held in her hand, felt like it was burning a hole in her palm. You gave me the key, Jack," she exclaimed, her voice rising with disbelief. "You told me to come. You said she wouldn't be here." "A key," Jack said, his eyebrows furrowing in mock confusion. He looked at the key in her hand. "I have no idea what you're talking about. That looks like one of Helena's old keys. You must have found it somewhere. Are you feeling all right, Kira? You seem overwrought." He was gaslighting her, in front of his wife. It was in that moment that Kira saw him for what he was. Not a savior, not a partner, but a puppeteer. And he was cutting her strings. "You lying bastard." Kira whispered the words, filled with a venom that surprised even herself. Helena, watching the exchange, pushed herself off the post. A grim, knowing look had settled on her face. She had seen this show before, perhaps in smaller, more subtle ways. The denials, the deflections, the casual rewriting of history. "Enough, Jack," Helena said, her voice regaining its strength. "The performance is over. She knows. I know. The only person still acting is you." Jackson's composure finally snapped. The charm evaporated, replaced by a raw, cold fury. "This is ridiculous," he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. He pointed a finger at Kira. "You, get out of this house. Now." Then he turned his glare on Helena. "And you. We will discuss your hysterical paranoia later, after your little friend leaves." He took a menacing step toward Kira, intending to physically escort her out. But as he moved, Helena cried out a sharp, ragged sound of pure agony. She doubled over her hands, clutching her belly, as a wave of pain visibly washed over her. "The baby," she gasped, her face ashen. "Something's wrong." The fake drama was instantly replaced by a terrifyingly real one. Jack froze his anger momentarily forgotten, a flicker of genuine panic in his eyes. Kira, despite her rage, felt a jolt of alarm. "Call an ambulance," Helena panted, her knuckles white where she gripped the banister. Now Jack called Dr. Chen. The confrontation was over. A far more urgent crisis had just begun, trapping the three of them together in the beautiful poisoned house by the sea. The wail of the ambulance siren receding into the distance was the sound of Kira's world shrinking to the size of the beach house foyer. Jackson had gone with Helena, his face a canvas of public-facing concern, barking orders and naming specialists into his phone. He'd thrown one last, venomous look at Kira over his shoulder. "Don't you move. Don't touch anything. We are going to deal with you when I get back." It wasn't a request. It was a threat. Kira stood there for what felt like an hour, the adrenaline slowly seeping out of her, leaving a cold, hollow residue of humiliation. The house was silent again, but now it was an accusatory silence. The family photos on the wall seemed to mock her. A picture of Jack and Helena on their wedding day, laughing drunk on what looked like real happiness. A picture of Helena as a young girl on this very beach with an older woman who must have been her grandmother. She was the intruder, the cheap, tawdry secret. Jack's words echoed in her ears, his casual, brutal dismissal of her. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He hadn't just lied. He had tried to erase her, to paint her as delusional in front of the one person whose opinion now mattered more than anything. Anger, hot and cleansing, began to burn through the shame. He had played her for a fool. He had used her ambition, her loneliness, her desire for a bigger life as tools for his own gratification. The promises of a future, a partnership, a seat on the board, all of it felt like smoke. She wandered aimlessly from the foyer into a large, sun-filled living room. It was furnished with comfortable, slightly worn pieces that spoke of generations of use. A grand piano stood in one corner, a cashmere throw draped over a chaise lounge. On a side table, a silver picture frame held a recent photo of Helena, her pregnancy just beginning to show her smile, genuine and radiant. Next to it was a small leather-bound book. Kira picked it up. It was a day planner. Helena's. Driven by a spiteful curiosity, she opened it. The pages were filled with elegant looping script. 10 a.m., Dr. Chen, ultrasound. 2 p.m., lunch with Audrey. 7 p.m., Apex Gala. And then circled in red on the calendar for next week, Grandma's birthday, baby's due date. A wave of nausea washed over Kira. This wasn't a loveless, empty marriage. This was a life, a real, detailed, ongoing life. Kira was just a footnote, a dirty little secret Jack kept in a different city. Her anger needed a target. She stormed through the house, fueled by a desire to find Something. Some proof that she wasn't crazy. Some leverage. Some way to reclaim a shred of her dignity. She went into the master bedroom. It smelled of lavender and sea air. Helena's scent. On the dresser, a jewelry box lay open. Inside, pearls and simple silver chains. Nothing ostentatious. This wasn't the room of a woman who flaunted her husband's wealth. Then she saw Jack's side of the room. It was pristine, impersonal. His closet was a regimented row of designer labels. His nightstand held only a charging dock and a biography of a ruthless hedge fund manager. But in his closet, tucked away behind a row of shoes, was a small, heavy, fireproof safe. Her heart began to beat faster. Men like Jack had safes for a reason. Secrets. The kind of secrets that were more valuable than money. She had no idea what the combination could be. She tried the obvious, his birthday. Helena's birthday, their anniversary. Nothing. She was about to give up when her eyes landed back on the day planner in her hand. Baby's due date. It was a long shot, a sentimental choice so unlike the cold man she thought she knew. But perhaps the man who bought this house for his wife, who married the woman in the photographs, had a flicker of that man left in him. She keyed in the 6 digits. The lock beeped. A soft click echoed in the silent room. It was open. Meanwhile, at the Monterey Peninsula Community Hospital, the sterile antiseptic smell was a harsh counterpoint to the salt air scent of home. Helena lay in a private room, hooked up to a fetal monitor. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of her son's heartbeat was the only sound she focused on. It was strong, steady. Dr. Audrey Chen. Her face a mixture of professional calm and personal concern, adjusted the IV drip. Your blood pressure is sky high, Lena. The stress caused a significant Braxton Hicks contraction, a bad one. We're giving you magnesium to calm things down, but you are officially on strict hospital bed rest until this baby comes. He's okay, Helena whispered, her eyes fixed on the monitor. He's a fighter, just like his mum, Audrey said, squeezing her hand. But you cannot have another shock like that. What happened? Jackson, who had been pacing in the hallway, making loud, important-sounding phone calls, chose that moment to enter. She's fine. Everything is fine, he announced, the royal we of his corporate pronouncements now applied to his wife's medical crisis. I've spoken to the head of cardiology at Stanford. He's on standby if we need him. Audrey turned to face him, her expression hardening. As Helena's doctor and friend, she had a unique immunity to Jack's brand of manipulative charm. The head of cardiology isn't what she needs, Jack. She needs peace and quiet. She needs the father of her child to stop causing situations that could send her into premature labor. Jack's face tightened. This was not my fault. That woman, Kira, she's unstable. She's been harassing me for months. I have no idea how she got to the house. Helena listened to the lie, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It clarified. The man she married was gone, replaced by this stranger who would stand in a hospital room and invent a story of a crazed stalker while his wife and unborn child were in jeopardy. The love she had clung to, the hope that they could fix things, dissolved completely. All that was left was a cold, hard resolve. She had to protect her son, and to do that, she had to get away from Jack. Audrey Helena said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through Jack's attempted rebuttal. Could you please ask my husband to leave? His presence is elevating my blood pressure. Audrey smiled faintly. Of course. She turned to Jack. You heard her. Visiting hours are over for you. I'll have security show you out if necessary. Jack stared at Helena, his mouth agape. He was being dismissed. By his wife. By her doctor. The loss of control was anathema to him. Helena, don't be ridiculous. We need to present a united front. The only thing I'm presenting right now is a baby. Helena retorted, her gaze like ice. And I will do it without you in the room. Goodbye, Jackson. Defeated and furious, Jack stormed out of the room, his final parting shot echoing down the hall. Fine, I have to go deal with the mess you created at the house anyway. Once he was gone, Helena turned to Audrey. I need a lawyer, a divorce lawyer, the best and most ruthless one you know, and I need you to help me. He can't know. Not yet. Audrey pulled a chair close to the bed. I know a guy. A shark. What's the plan? He thinks I'm weak. Lying in this bed, helpless. Helena said the rhythmic beat of the fetal monitor, a drumbeat of determination. He's going back to that house to deal with Kira, to threaten her, pay her off, whatever he does to make problems go away. He thinks the game is over. But it's just beginning. Back at the beach house, Kira stared into the open safe. There were no stacks of cash or illicit jewels. It was far more valuable. There were files, thick manila folders, each neatly labeled. The first one she pulled out was labeled Dorian Croft. Kira's blood ran cold. Dorian Croft was the CEO of Sterling Cooper Tech, her boss, the man who was Jack's most hated rival. Inside were printouts of emails surreptitiously forwarded from Dorian's private account. Financial projections, marketing strategies, confidential R&D reports for a new project Sterling Cooper was developing. Jack wasn't just competing with Dorian. He was spying on him. Corporate espionage. The next file was labeled Project Chimera. This was Jack's baby, a revolutionary AI integration platform that Apex Innovations was set to unveil in a month, a project so secret that employees used code words to discuss it. Inside were 2 sets of books. One showed a project soaring over budget, plagued by setbacks, the version being presented to the board and shareholders. The other showed the project was actually ahead of schedule and wildly successful. He was manipulating his own company's stock, driving the price down with bad news so he could acquire more shares through shell corporations before the big reveal sent it skyrocketing. A classic and highly illegal pump-and-dump scheme in reverse. This was the man she'd admired, a common criminal in a billion-dollar suit. But it was the last thing in the safe that made her physically recoil. It was a small velvet bag. Inside wasn't a file, but a burner phone and a single diamond earring. A memory sparked in Kira's mind, a news story from a year ago. A young journalist, a rising star, who had been doing an expose on Apex, had vanished. Her car was found abandoned near the Golden Gate Bridge. The case had gone cold, but her family had made a public plea mentioning her favorite pair of diamond earrings, a gift from her mother, one of which was missing. Kira dropped the bag as if it were on fire. This went beyond cheating and financial crimes. This was something dark, something dangerous. Jack's threat. We are going to deal with you when I get back. Suddenly took on a terrifying new weight. He wasn't just going to silence her. He was going to erase her. Just like he'd apparently erased the journalist. Just like he'd tried to erase her in the foyer in front of Helena. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, her hand shaking. "Is this Kira Vance?" a woman's voice asked. It was calm, steady, and eerily familiar. "Who is this?" Kira breathed. "This is Helena Price." The sound of Helena's voice on the phone was so unexpected, so contrary to the laws of nature, as Kira now understood them, that she couldn't speak. Women in this situation were supposed to be enemies. They were supposed to fight, to scream, to claw at each other over the man who had wronged them. They were not supposed to call each other. "Are you still there?" Helena's voice was patient, devoid of the morning's raw anger. It had been replaced by something far more formidable focus. "Yes," Kira finally managed. "I'm here. Is everything okay?" "The baby. The baby is fine. For now." Helena replied, a subtle emphasis on the last two words. "Which is why I'm calling. My husband is on his way back to the house. I imagine he's not in a very good mood." That was the understatement of the century. "What do you want?" Kira asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "Right now, we want the same thing," Helena said simply. "To make it through the day. Jackson is predictable. He will arrive, and he will attempt to control the situation. With you, that will involve a combination of threats and money. He'll offer you a severance package, an NDA thick enough to choke a horse, and a warning to disappear from his life forever. If you refuse, the threats will become less veiled." "Am I wrong?" Kira looked at the contents of the safe spread out on the bed, the file on her own boss, the evidence of massive financial fraud, the velvet bag with the single, horrifying earring. Helena wasn't wrong. She was chillingly, terrifyingly right. "No," Kira whispered. "You're not wrong. He believes I am incapacitated in a hospital bed, worrying about my health. He believes you are a loose end he can easily tie up. He underestimates both of us." Helena continued, her voice hardening. "That is our advantage. I need to know what you found. I know he keeps a safe in the closet. The combination is our son's due date. I assume you're smart enough to have figured that out." Kira was stunned into silence again. This woman was playing chess, while Kira was still trying to figure out the rules of checkers. "I'm in the safe," Kira admitted. "Good," Helena said. "Tell me what's inside." "Everything." Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Kira detailed her discoveries. The corporate espionage against her own company. The 2 sets of books for Project Chimera. And finally, her voice dropping to a near whisper, she described the burner phone and the diamond earring. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Helena finally spoke, her voice was laced with ice. "Cassandra Hayes. That was her name. The journalist. I always suspected Jack had something to do with her disappearance. She was getting too close. The name gave the earring a soul. Cassandra Hayes. A real person. A life extinguished because she got in Jackson's way." Kira felt sick. "He is more dangerous than you can possibly imagine," Helena said softly. "The man I married died a long time ago. This version, this thing that wears his face, will destroy anyone who threatens him. He will destroy you, and he will try to take my son. I will not let that happen." "What are you proposing?" Kira asked, the word "we" from their earlier conversation echoing in her mind. "I am proposing an alliance," Helena stated. "You have information that can ruin him professionally. I have the legal and financial standing to ruin him personally. Separately he can crush us. Together we might have a chance. A car door slammed outside. Headlights swept across the bedroom window. "He's here," Kira hissed into the phone. "Listen to me very carefully." Helena's voice was urgent now, sharp and commanding. "Do not confront him. Do not show him what you know. You are terrified. You are humiliated. You will take the money and sign the NDA. You will cry. You will be the pathetic little mistress he expects you to be. Do you understand? Play the part. Get out of that house with your life. And the files. The earring. Leave them. I have a man, Mr. Peterson, the groundskeeper. He's been with my family for 40 years. He is the only person on this earth I trust implicitly. He will retrieve everything after you leave. Just put it all back in the safe and lock it. Jack won't think to check it. He thinks his secrets are secure." The front door opened downstairs. Kira Jackson's voice boomed through the house, a roar of thunder before the storm. "Do we have a deal?" Helena pressed. Kira looked at her reflection in the darkened window. She saw a scared, ambitious girl who had been seduced by power, but underneath a core of steel was forming forged in the fires of the last few hours. She could run, take the money, and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Or she could make a stand. She could align herself with this incredible, formidable woman on the other end of the line. "Deal," Kira whispered. She hung up quickly, shoved the files and the velvet bag back into the safe, spun the dial, and wiped away the hot tears of fear replacing them with the cold, calculated tears of a victim. She took a deep, shuddering breath and prepared to give the performance of her life. Downstairs, Jackson Price was a portrait of controlled rage. He found her in the living room, standing by the window looking out at the tumultuous sea. She had made herself look smaller, clutching her arms around herself, her face pale and tear-streaked. So he began his voice, dripping with contempt. "You've had your little adventure. I hope you're satisfied. You've put my wife and my unborn child in the hospital. I didn't know Jack," she whimpered, turning to face him. She let her voice tremble. "You promised me she was gone. You promised me this was our time." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "What you and I had was a transaction, Kira. An amusement. You were fun. But you crossed a line. You came into my home." "Her home." Kira corrected a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was a masterful touch. "Yes." "Her home," he conceded, striding toward her. He pulled a checkbook and a thick document from his briefcase. "This is how this ends. You are going to sign this non-disclosure agreement. It is ironclad. It covers everything: our relationship, my business, my family. In exchange, I will give you this check for $250,000. Then you will walk out that door, get in your car, and I will never see or hear from you again. If I do, if you so much as breathe my name to another living soul, I will use the full force of my legal and financial power to obliterate you. Your career, your reputation, your future, it will all be gone. Do you understand me?" It was exactly as Helena had predicted. The script was flawless. Kira looked at the check. It was more money than she had ever seen. A month ago, she would have sold her soul for it. Now it looked like 30 pieces of silver. "Okay," she whispered, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Okay, Jack." She took the pen he offered her hand, shaking convincingly. She signed the NDA without reading it. He tore out the check and handed it to her. His face was a mask of cold satisfaction. He had won. He had controlled the situation, tidied up the loose end. "Now get out," he said, his voice flat all business. Kira nodded mutely. She picked up her overnight bag from the foyer, not making eye contact, and walked out the door. She didn't look back. As she drove down the long gravel driveway, she saw a weathered-looking older man in overalls by the gate, pretending to trim the hedges. He met her eyes for a split second and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Mr. Peterson. The first part of the plan was complete. Now it was Helena's turn. In her hospital bed, Helena ended the call with her lawyer. The shark's name was Barrett Thorne, and he had sounded positively gleeful at the prospect of dismantling Jackson Price. "The evidence is being secured as we speak, Mr. Thorne," Helena had said. "Corporate fraud, espionage, and potential implication in a disappearance. We have him. I want to freeze all joint assets file for an emergency restraining order, and I want sole custody." As she hung up, Audrey came in. "Heard you had a visitor," she said, checking the monitors, "and I saw your groundskeeper drop off a package at the nurse's station for you." "The first steps of my new life." Helena said, a grim smile on her face. She looked down at her belly where her son was resting peacefully now. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to him. "Mummy's going to make sure of it." The war had just begun. But for the first time in a very long time, Helena Price felt like she was going to win. For the next 2 weeks, the world that Jackson Price inhabited continued to spin on its axis of power and control. He returned to San Francisco, leaving the unpleasantness at Carmel behind him. Helena remained in the hospital, a situation he framed to his board and social circle as a tragic but manageable complication. He sent flowers daily, enormous, ostentatious bouquets that were promptly dojacked to the nurse's station by Audrey. He called twice a day, leaving calm, concerned voicemails on Helena's phone, which she saved as evidence for her lawyer. He believed he had the situation contained. Kira Vance had taken the money and vanished just as he'd commanded. His wife was safely tucked away, physically unable to cause trouble. Project Chimera was on track for its grand unveiling, the crowning achievement of his career. He moved through his life with the serene confidence of a man who has never faced a consequence he couldn't buy or threaten his way out of. He had forgotten one of his own cardinal rules. The most dangerous threats are the ones you don't see coming. Helena, meanwhile, was a silent whirlwind of activity from her hospital bed. With Barrett Thorne on a legal rampage and Audrey acting as her trusted gatekeeper, she orchestrated her counterattack. The package from Mr. Wilson Peterson, containing the contents of the safe, had been delivered to Thorne's office via bonded courier. An emergency motion citing credible threats and financial malfeasance had been filed under seal, freezing the majority of their joint assets. Jack wouldn't even know until his corporate card was declined. Kira, holed up in a hotel paid for by Helena's private trust, worked with a forensic accounting team hired by Thorne. She walked them through the double-entry ledgers for Project Chimera, explaining the technical jargon, identifying the shell corporations Jack used to repurchase Apex stock. She provided her old boss, Dorian Croft, with an anonymous tip and a single explosive document proving Jack's espionage. The fallout at Sterling Cooper was immediate and chaotic, launching an internal investigation that further destabilized Jack's position in the industry. Kira was no longer a victim. She was a weapon. The day of the Apex Innovations annual shareholder meeting arrived. It was to be Jackson's magnum opus. Held in a grand ballroom in a downtown San Francisco hotel, The event was packed with investors, analysts, and tech journalists. Jack took the stage to a round of thunderous applause. He was in his element, a master showman, painting a picture of a future powered by Apex, a future made possible by the genius of Project Chimera. Today, we are not just launching a product, he declared, his voice resonating with passion. We are launching a new era. Project Chimera will redefine the very fabric of artificial intelligence, creating value and efficiencies beyond our wildest dreams. He was about to start the live demo when the ballroom doors at the back of the room swung open. All heads turned. Standing there was Helena Price. She was not in a hospital gown. She was dressed in a sharp, elegant maternity dress, her bearing regal and commanding. On one side of her was her lawyer, the formidable Barrett Thorne. On the other was Dr. Audrey Chen, her expression grim. Behind them were two stern-looking men in dark suits. A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. Jackson froze on stage, the confident smile sliding from his face. "Helena, what are you doing here? You should be in the hospital." "I was discharged this morning," Helena said, her voice amplified by a microphone. One of the men had handed her. She walked slowly, deliberately down the center aisle, a queen reclaiming her kingdom. "And I'm still a majority shareholder in this company, Jackson. Or did you forget that my family's trust owns 30% of Apex?" Jack's face went white. He had forgotten. In his arrogance, he had always seen her inheritance as part of his portfolio, not as her own independent source of power. "This is neither the time nor the place," he hissed, trying to regain control. "Security, please escort my wife out. She's unwell." "I'm perfectly well," Helena said, arriving at the foot of the stage. "But this company is not. It's being run by a fraud and a criminal." Thorne stepped forward. "Jackson Price," he announced, his voice booming through the ballroom. "You are hereby served with a temporary restraining order and a notice of divorce proceedings. Furthermore, we have submitted a dossier to the SEC and the U.S. Attorney's Office detailing a scheme to defraud the shareholders of this company by manipulating stock prices through false reporting on Project Chimera." Chaos erupted. Phones were out recording. Journalists were scrambling. Investors were shouting. Jack stared down at Helena, his face a mask of pure hatred. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" Helena replied calmly. And on the massive screen behind Jack, where the Project Chimera logo had been glowing moments before, a new image appeared. It was a scanned copy of the secret ledger from his safe, showing the true, profitable status of the project. Then, a new figure emerged from the side of the room and walked toward the stage. It was Kira Vance. She was no longer the scared, weeping girl from the beach house. She was dressed in a power suit, her face set with determination. "My name is Kira Vance," she said into the microphone. "For the last 6 months, I was a personal consultant to Mr. Price. I can attest to the authenticity of those documents, as can the forensic accounting team I have been working with for the last 2 weeks. Jack looked back and forth between Helena and Kira, finally understanding. The 2 women he had seen as his victim and his toy had united against him. It was a possibility so alien to his narcissistic worldview that he had never even considered it. "And there's one more thing," Helena said, her voice dropping, drawing the entire room into a hushed silence. "The disappearance of journalist Cassandra Hayes last year. She was investigating Apex at the time. We found this in your personal safe, Jackson. On the screen, an image of the single diamond earring appeared next to a news photo of Cassandra Hayes wearing the matching pair. That was the final blow. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Jackson Price, the tech visionary, the master of the universe, was finished. The two men in suits, now identifiable as federal agents, walked onto the stage. Jackson Price, one of them said, his voice flat. "You need to come with us." As they escorted him off the stage, past the shocked faces of his board and the flashing cameras of the press, his eyes met Helena's one last time. He saw no triumph in her gaze, no hatred, no love. He saw only a vast, empty space where he used to be. He saw indifference. And for a man who lived on the adoration and fear of others, it was the cruelest punishment of all. In the end, Jackson Price's empire crumbled just as quickly as he had built it. Convicted of securities fraud and facing an ongoing investigation into Cassandra Hayes's disappearance, his name became a byword for corporate greed and moral bankruptcy. The story of his downfall, orchestrated by the two women he had wronged, became a legend in the worlds of tech and finance. Helena gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she named Anderson, after her grandmother. She sold her stake in Apex, severing the last tie to her old life, and moved permanently to the beach house in Carmel. The house, once a scene of betrayal, became a true sanctuary of peace and new beginnings. She raised her son, surrounded by the sound of the ocean, the loyalty of friends like Audrey, and the strength she had discovered within herself. Kira Vance, granted immunity for her testimony, became an overnight sensation. She turned down dozens of high-paying jobs, instead using the money from her new consulting firm to create a foundation dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and supporting women in tech. She never forgot the lessons learned in that house by the sea, that true power isn't about control, but about courage, and that sometimes the most unexpected alliances are the ones that can change the world. This story is a stark reminder that secrets rarely stay buried, and that underestimating someone can be the most dangerous mistake of all. If you were moved by the resilience of Helena and Kira, please hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What do you think was the biggest mistake Jackson made? Let us know in the comments below.